Andy, we're good? Brianna, we're good? Okay. Good evening, everybody. We will call the Clovis City Council meeting to order for January 20th, 2026 at 6 p.m. At this time, if you can all rise, Councilmember Basco will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If our city clerk, Para, would call the roll.
Yes. Councilmember Ashbeck will be absent during roll call and possibly late. Councilmember Baskell? Here. Councilmember Bessinger?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Pierce?
Here.
And Mayor Moanatua?
Here. This time we're going to open the public comment portion of the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within the city's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. If you can limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, you can come up to the podium and address the council. I want to state for the record, we do have one from phone call, but it's from Megan Nash. It was on January 16th, and she wanted to express her concerns and opposition related to the motto "In God We Trust," which we discussed last week. She wanted that. And then there's also another one from Hilario Fuentes, and this is in regarding to LED lights being too bright within the city. And so we have those two written for tonight, and anyone else can address the council. Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Bill Scott, 341 Evergreen. I just wanted to thank everybody, including the staff, that put together the survey and moved this forward, and to let you all know that we've already started collecting money to pay for it, and we're doing pretty good on that. So, thank you.
Thank you. I do want to welcome back Mr. Trevino. We missed you for a good month and a half, so I know you've been on vacation, but just welcome back Mr. Trevino back in council chambers. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move to the consent calendar, but before we do that, I just wanted consensus from the council. If we can move item 7 right after consent, it'll go before 5 and 6, and that is for the appointment onto the Consolidated Mosquito Abatement District. And so our appointee is here in the chambers, and I wanted him to just move it up right after consent. Are you guys all okay with that? No problem. Okay, we're going to do that. So we'll move to consent first. Items on consent are considered as one. They're routine in nature and recommended for approval by the City Council as one item. Is there any item that the council would like to pull, 1 through 4? Anyone in the public like to discuss any of the items 1 through 4? Okay, yes, go ahead, Mr. Trevino. And if you can let us know which one.
I wanted to talk about the claim rejection of the general liability claim on behalf of Sarah Borges. I don't know who she is, but this was bringing me back to maybe 10, 15 years ago. I had an aunt. She was at Letterman Park, and she was out there with her husband. Her husband used to work for the city of Clovis. And she slipped and fell through a gopher hole. And she had a cast for a few months or so, and I told my uncle, why don't you sue the city of Clovis? Oh, no, I can't do that because I work for the city of Clovis. But all the times that I've been in here and all the times I've seen all these type of claims, I've never heard the city say, you know what? We're going to go ahead and pay for it. It's our fault. And I've never understood why the city never says, you know what? It's our fault. We're going to go ahead and pay for it. Otherwise, the claimant is going to have to get a lawyer, and it's going to end up in court. So that's something that I don't understand. So anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trevino. Any other comments regarding any items 1 through 4? Okay, we go ahead and close the public portion and bring it back to the council. What's the pleasure of the council?
Motion to approve items 1 through 4.
Okay, can we get a second? Second. Okay, we have motion second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, we're going to move to item 7, and this is to consider appointment. It's an appointment to the Consolidated Mosquito Abatement District, and if you all recall, we had a resignation, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, and so now we're going to do the appointment. And staff on this will be our city manager, Andy Hausler, and I will chime in if there's anything else as well.
Yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you, Mayor. So Jennifer Williams, who served as the city's representative to the Consolidated Mosquito Abatement District Board of Trustees since 2021, submitted her resignation. After advertising an opening, Mr. John Barron has expressed interest in serving as the city's new representative and submitted an application and resume summarizing his qualifications. Upon review of his qualifications, the mayor is recommending that John Barron be appointed to the Board of Trustees for the remaining term, which will expire on December 31st, 2026. And Mayor, if you have any comments on this, I'd turn it back to you.
No. We had the staff put out a request, and so just so that the public knows, it was put on social media, it was put out a public notice, and so we received applications, we reviewed the applications, and we interviewed Mr. Barron, and so we had the pleasure of meeting, both Andy and I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Barron, interviewing him, and expressing his interest in serving the Mosquito Abatement District, and so this is something I would recommend for us to approve together, since he has the background and the interest to serve on this board. So, any other comments or questions from the council? Okay. This time, I'm going to open the public portion. Mr. Barron, I don't know if you want to address the council at all, or if you can at this time, and if there's anyone else who would like to state anything, you may do so as well.
Okay. Let's see.
Yep, it's on.
Good, it's on. Thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, I just expressed my interest because of growing up in the Valley and Sanger and area for much of my childhood, and then coming back to the area after my college degrees. And the ebb and flow, if you will, of the mosquito population, especially on the east side, I'm very familiar with. And we just hope we can have a significant impact on reducing this population year after year after year. So we'll see what the ins and outs are of it, because I don't know that much about it yet, but you know, willing to find out, and like I say, hopefully we can have a significant impact. My wife dearly loves to be out in the back and enjoy our 15-foot deep backyard, because she's got it decorated with all kinds of beautiful flowers and pots. It's hard for her to get out to tend those without getting eaten up. You know, she's out there for 2 minutes, like, oh, I've been bitten 4 times, you know. And then she's dealing with them all day long, or for a couple of days while they itch and scratch. And I'm sure she's not the only one. And, you know, we have such a beautiful area to be out inside, you know, for good 8, 10, sometimes 12 months a year. Like, this is one of the mildest winters I've seen. So we just want to be able to enjoy that. And all of us, you know, all the residents of the area and visitors to be able to enjoy it without being eaten up. We don't want to have a reputation like the Great Lakes states where the, you know, mosquitoes are as big as birds and carry you away, you know. But at any rate, I just hope we can have a significant impact on it, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Barron.
Any
Any questions for
questions,
Mr.
or-
Barron? Okay, thank you.
Great.
Anyone else like
Thank
to
you.
address the council on this item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close. Oh, Mr. Trevino, you wanted to state something? Okay, come on. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Steve Trevino. I just want to know what his education is. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I'll have you state it. It's in his application too, but go ahead. Mhm.
Okay. I was, my first 2 years of college were at UC Davis. Graduated from Sanger High School, California State Scholarship Federation, life member. Went on to UC Davis and did my first 2 years there. I relocated to Southern California, did 2 quarters at UCLA. That's when I got interested in nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian by training and self-employed consultant for the last 48 years. And in the Fresno County, greater Fresno County area, all the way from Delano to Madera and Kalinga to Wishiaw, Oakhurst area, you name it. At any rate, I graduated from UC Berkeley with, I came back to Fresno State, graduated from Fresno State with my bachelor's degree, went on to UC Berkeley and got my master's degree in public health. And during that time, I did a course on epidemiology, which we studied vectors, which of course involves mosquitoes, which carry disease, you know, and other types of ways that disease is transmitted. And as a matter of fact, at that time, they were talking about this big thing new on the horizon, and that was messenger RNA vaccines. Sound familiar? COVID vaccine, okay? And the designer of that technology, if you will, was at Berkeley at the time, and he came out during COVID and said that that vaccine never should have been given to kids and people that weren't elderly or high risk. So, anyway. Okay. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion, bring it back to the council. What's the pleasure of the council?
Before I make my motion, the work that the Mosquito Abatement District does is important. We all of us know one person whose wife got West Nile and unfortunately is wheelchair bound. So there are plenty of diseases out there, other than just the nuisance. There are some serious diseases which have affected our populace. I'd like to make the motion to appoint John Varon to the Consolidated Mosquito Abatement District.
I'd like to second that
Okay,
motion.
we have a motion second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4 with 1 absence. Thank you very much, sir. Congratulations. Okay. Okay, we'll move now to item 5, and this is to consider approval of the final draft of the water rate study report and authorize staff to proceed with the Proposition 218 public hearing and majority protest vote to amend water charges, fees, and recycled water charges. Staff on this is Kevin Tuttle, our Assistant Public Utilities Director, and a whole bunch of you. And so if you guys can all introduce yourselves and then go ahead with it, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as mentioned, we are here to present the final draft water rate study report and request authorization to proceed with the Prop 218 public hearing for the water charges, fees, and recycled water charges. I'm joined up here by Nicholas Torstensen, our Deputy Public Utilities Director, and I also have the pleasure of being joined by Jeremy Tamargo, our consultant from Raftellus. So with that, I'll actually hand it over to Nick, who will start the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we're here to talk about the water rate study and the findings of this report. So the agenda for our presentation this evening is to go over the study goals and objectives, and then we'll talk about some rate design considerations, and then the financial plan, and then we'll go over bill comparison and utility survey, and then talk about Proposition 218 and the next steps. And this presentation should look pretty familiar. This is very similar to the presentation that we gave in November. So part of a rate study, there's three main components. The first is the financial plan, which develops the amount of revenue that's needed for the water utility. And then there's the cost allocation, or a cost of service analysis, which studies how the cost should be distributed proportionally to each customer class. And then there's the rate design, which talks about how can the rates ensure fairness. As a part of this study, there's 3 major challenges that this study will help us address, and the proposed rates will help us address. And the first is inflationary pressures, which we've seen significant inflationary pressures over the recent years. And the next is the more stringent regulatory requirements, and these become unfunded mandates. And then there's increased capital costs to address high-risk assets. And the majority of the high-risk assets in our water system are located at our surface water treatment plant. And just to talk a little bit about inflation, this is a diagram that shows the CPI. And as you can see, there's the industry-wide CPI, and then you can see how the specific water and sewer costs outpace the inflation of just the normal CPI by a significant amount. And these are the challenges that our specific utility faces. And here's an example of costs that we have seen in our budget in our budgets as we've been over the recent years. At our surface water treatment plant, there's filters that are used to filter the water. In 2021, we bought those filters at approximately $1,500 each. And then current cost, we just recently got quotes, and they were $2,800. And that's just over a 4-year span, and we've seen an increase of almost 100%. And then I'm sure all of us have experienced the increased price in vehicles. Just a standard work truck we've seen that we used to purchase in 2021 for around $29,000, and that's costing just a couple months ago $49,000. And then I know all of us have experienced increased energy costs. So we've seen those costs almost double, and that's a significant part of our budget. And then, like I talked about, we have really important assets at our surface water treatment plant, and construction at our surface water treatment plant. We've seen those costs go up 175%. So it's hard to keep up with these increased costs and just the inflationary pressures that we're facing as a water utility. And just to talk about our water system a little bit, our system is performing well, but it's aging. So there is going to be work and capital projects that need to be done in terms of maintenance. So over the recent years, we do experience water main breaks as a part of our system. And then our surface water treatment plant depends on water from the Enterprise Canal. And then there's times where we aren't able to run the plant due to just issues of water in the canal. And then we also have, we're always doing projects to rehab portions of our water system as well. And in one of these photos, you see there's a tank, and it's a steel tank, and we had to do a relining project where we would repaint the inside and sandblast, and we're getting ready to do another project like that as well. And then here is a list of a couple capital projects that are coming in the near future. And one of those is a recharge basin, and we're hoping to begin construction on that either this year or next year. And that'll help us to address the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, so that we can recharge more water. And then we're also doing a project for our water meters to increase to enhance the technology of our water meters, and that's so that we shift from our current meters to advanced metering infrastructure. And then there's another project for a water tank, so they increase the storage in our system, and then there's a pretreatment project, and that'll help us to be able to run the surface water treatment plant more often, so we won't have to shut down during those days that we have to shut down now, so we can increase the capacity of our surface water treatment plant. And then there's disinfection reliability, and then also other planned projects. And all these capital projects are a big part of the water rate study, and gaining funding so that we can perform this work to improve and enhance our system, and to maintain the sustainability of our system. And then another pressure that we face is regulatory pressures. And these regulatory pressures put a lot of financial strain on the water utility, because they become unfunded mandates, something that we have to pay for, but there's no way to generate the funding. So PFAS regulations is one of those, and that's increased sampling at each of our well sites and other facilities. We just received an order that increased the amount of samples that we need to take. just to address this. But so that's an increased cost to our system. And there's also legislation called Making Conservation a California Way of Life. And that's to reduce water usage, and that is increasing just the demand on our utility. And then there's the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And all of these things, and amongst other legislation, increase just the regulatory demand on our utility and increase the cost to operate the system. And now I'll pass it off to Kevin to go over the rate design.
Thank you, Nick. So getting into the kind of the meat of the rate study, so we look at the rate design considerations, and the first component of that really boiled down to looking at the current state of our legal environment as they revolve around water rates and how they're developed and what goes into them. And I'll go through these quickly, but it really starts with the Capistrano Taxpayers Association versus the City of San Juan Capistrano decision. And that was in 2015, and the implications of that were that tiered rate structures are not in violation of Proposition 218, but they have to be supported by a cost of service analysis. And so our 2016 rate study, if you've ever looked at that, that study looked to go back and address the concerns that came out of this Capistrano decision. But then subsequent to that, we have the Coziar versus Otay Water District, where they went back and kind of further defined that, where they said, okay, industry standard methodologies are not a substitute for demonstrating these cost-based rates. And that was even further added onto by Pats versus the City of San Diego, where they said, hey, tier rates must be designed with system-specific data. So you have to have very specific data that backs up everything that goes into your cost of service analysis. And what's interesting is I believe it was the Pats decision recently went before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court chose not to even hear it. They said, no, we're staying with the decision that's already been made. So these have been reviewed, and that they're what we used as the lens going forward in our rate study. So with that, we took a look at our existing rate structure and how that works. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice those are our existing water rates, just briefly summarized. We have a service charge for residential, whether it be single-family or multifamily. We have our 3-tiered water volume rates that we charge. And then on the non-residential, so the landscape, commercial, industrial users, we have a service charge by water meter, and then we had 2 tiers for the non-residential. So through the lens of those cases that were recently decided, we realized we need to update our cost of service evaluation and make sure that we confirm our costs are assigned to the appropriate customer class. And then also, too, the rate structure needed revision, where we looked at the tiered water rates and decided it was probably best for us to move away from that and go to a single volumetric water use rate. So looking at the past and kind of viewing it through that lens, 2009 was our last rate increase, true rate increase, where we did a targeted increase. And that was 35% in year 1 and 15% in year 2, and an additional 5%. And looking even farther back, prior to that, 1991 was the last rate increase before then. In 2016, I mentioned that was a revenue neutral adjustment. So the main purpose of that study was looking at the Capistrano decision and evaluating our existing rate structure and determining where our compliance was with that. And so there was a revision to the rates where we went from 4 tiers to 3 tiers, and then we actually added drought rates in that study. So just a brief note on public outreach. As we got into this, in November, we presented to council kind of a status update, if you will, a workshop of where we were at in the process. And subsequent to that, we recognized a real need to get out with the public and reach out, kind of hear the public's feedback. So we've done a lot of work with the public since then. So November 3rd was our council workshop. Since then, in December, we met at the Senior Center 3 times in December, 1 time in January. We also held a meeting here in council chambers on December 17th to allow the public to come out and discuss with us the status of the rate study, answer any questions they may have. And then we had targeted stakeholder meetings in between there, where we met several times with specific stakeholder groups. And we received a lot of really important feedback from these meetings. I just on a personal note, I'll say meeting at the Senior Center was a joy to interact. I was there on all 4 meetings, and it was great to be out there at the senior center and to interact with the public at those. But one of the things we heard a lot about was our water bill. And so this is a typical utility service bill, and everyone kind of looks up at that top right number and says, oh my goodness, you're going to raise this, we presented 23% in November. And they see the, $180, oh my goodness, well, 23% on that matters, especially if you're, at home. And we want to let the public know and kind of just do a brief kind of informational snippet here that we're only looking at the water. So that's a portion of your bill here, and that's these 2 lines. And it could be 3 or 4 lines depending on if you go into separate tiers. So we do, so here you'll notice it says tier 1. So on your existing bill, if you go into the second tiers, we do itemize that for you to let you know how far into the tiers you go. But we wanted to be real specific that this is the portion of your bill that's being impacted. It's not the overall bill. This bill includes sewer, it includes recycling, refuse, street sweeping. So there are other components. It's not the whole bill that's being adjusted. So taking in all of that feedback from the stakeholder meetings, meeting with the public, hearing what they had to say, reviewing our rates, design, we came up with a financial plan. And this is really where we came up with that 23%. So this graphic will look very familiar from November, but you'll see some numbers have changed on it. So in meeting with the public and hearing some of the feedback that, hey, I'm on a fixed income, 23% hurts, especially when you do 23% 3 times in a row. So we really wanted to go back and tighten our proverbial belts where we could and look at, areas where, okay, are we being conservative? Maybe this number can be reduced a little bit. So any of those pinch points where we thought, okay, maybe we can be even more realistic with this, we tried to hit those numbers. And so what we're presenting tonight is reduced from that 23. So we're requesting approval to move forward on a 21, 21, and 18 now. So we were able to go back and to redefine those numbers a little bit, bring them down. So we considered that a little bit of a win. We're happy with that, and this is the option we'd like to present moving forward. So with that, if you get into the water rate study, and we won't go through all these numbers, this is a lot of numbers, but we wanted to present it to the public just for the record. This is also included in your rate study, but there are summary tables in there that go through each one of the rates that we're proposing and what the impacts to those rates are. So on the left-hand side, you have the different categories that are charged in existing, and then what we're proposing to go to. And so we have the existing rates and then the proposed rates on the right-hand side. And so for instance, I'll just look at one here. So if we look at single family right now, the service charge is $27.71, and that will be changing going forward. So there will no longer be a per unit cost. Now we're charging everything by your actual meter. And the reason we're doing that is when we got into the cost of service analysis, we recognize that there's maybe a better way to do this in terms of proportionality. And that's one of the big things we want to get into in this, is making sure that everyone's charged based on their proportional impact on the system. So recognizing that, we looked at the meter size and viewed that really as a more, exactly that proportional way of delving it out. An 8-inch meter serves a lot more water than a 1-inch meter, right? Just kind of logically speaking. And so that's the way we're recommending moving forward, and that's for residential, commercial, and landscape. So you'll notice now all of that's incorporated into one area of billing. And the same goes for recycled water. So our recycled water is also billed by meter size. We also looked at things like private fire lines and revising that cost. That's been something we've had a lot of outreach from our commercial partners on. So we took a second look at that, and that's actually greatly reduced. So you'll notice for a 4-inch and less, we were charging a uniform rate of $204.08. That's now gone down to, say, a 4-inch and less is now $20. So we redid the methodology on that completely as part of this study.
Go ahead, Councilman
Just a
Basel.
quick question on that. Which line would be a typical residential line?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So let me go back. So the vast majority of our system are 1-inch services. Some of our older areas, you get down into the 5/8 and 3/4, but the vast majority, and all new construction, is a 1-inch.
Okay, so based on the water rate, it would be from $22.30, on the 1-inch line, and it could go up to $50
So actually, for residential, it would have been $27.71
Okay.
per unit. And we're gonna go down now to here, and we'll be charging $33.46 for a standard 1-inch connection. And that's just the service charge.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have a slide here in a few that will kind of break down the bill impacts or generalized bill impacts, to kind of show you how all that'll work out. So as mentioned, we did update private fire lines, and then also too, just looking at some of our other miscellaneous billing, like construction water and hydrant meters that are part of the construction practice. We looked at those as well and updated those as part of this process. Volume rates, as I mentioned, currently we have 3 tiers for residential and 2 tiers for commercial industrial. We're now migrating to a single rate. So, oops, someone's birthday. So for instance, from 0 to 23,000 gallons, we billed $1.13 for each of those 1,000 gallons, all the way up to $2.33 if you got up into tier 3 over 40,000 gallons. We're migrating away from the tiered system, and now it'll be just one singular rate. So you notice this is a pretty consistent column here. So $2.02 is where it'll start out for volume, and that's from your first gallon to your last gallon of use. So it's pretty easy to calculate your bill now as well. Recycle water, we've done some marginal updates on that as well. So from 71 cents to 87 cents per 1,000 gallons. And then, as I mentioned, the hydrant meter, we went back and updated that as well. That'll go to our standard volumetric use of $2.02.
Question on that, Kevin.
Yes.
So with that rationale, if you go back to that last slide.
Yep.
So it doesn't help the person who conserves, correct? Because then if I'm if I'm gonna use like crazy, I still get charged as my next door neighbor who only waters when the city tells them to water and whatever the use is. Is that, I mean, is that
Yeah,
pretty standard?
no,
When I'm
you're-
reading that correctly?
Yeah, your rationale is correct, and that's one of those consequences of when we look at those court decisions and say, okay, well, we'd love to stay with tiers because 100% we agree with you.
Yeah.
But then you have to have a really good data basis to back all of that up. And right now, we simply don't have that data available to us. Nick mentioned the meter project that we're undergoing, so that's our advanced metering infrastructure. And our hope is that as we implement that program in, let's call it 5 to 10 years, we will have all of that data to maybe back up and go back to tiered rate structure as we get into a cost of service analysis. But in our current state, we just don't have the data to be able to really substantiate tiered rates. So that's why right now, the volumetric rate for the city of Clovis in our current state is what we feel is the appropriate methodology. And with the hope that as we implement some of these better technologies going forward, we will be able to get back to a point where we meet the legal requirement to do those tiered rates.
So the legal, whatever the requirement is, our current technology is insufficient to justify the tiers, is what you're saying. So even the meters right now that's not even sufficient data where it shows me what I used last year and this year I always see it in the bill, but that's not even sufficient is what you're saying.
So we do have meters that can do it, but for instance, we're undergoing a program right now where we're migrating away from, so we have direct read meters still in our system, which means we have a meter reader physically go out, have to lift the lid on the meter and read the dial on it and record that number. And those are what we're replacing with that advanced metering infrastructure project, but we're still in the process of converting those over, right? And then we also have these antennas we're going to install, and council actually approved a couple months ago the purchase of those antennas. And so we're looking to install those, and we'll do a whole study to get those connected to these these special wireless meters, if you will. And once we get that whole program in place, then we'll start getting much better data and much more granular data, where we can get it all the way down to like the hour. We can see what water use is being used. But that program's still a ways out.
And the previous slide, I think,
Sure.
it also showed, even before this one, okay. So even from 1 inch down, it's the same, 33.46, right? So even if you have a 5/8 inch main coming in, I'm being charged as much as the 1-inch guy also, correct?
Correct.
Is it because it's minuscule, sort of the usage, regardless of from 5/8 to 3/4 to an inch? Or, because you said the bigger the pipes, logically we were charging them more, but yet from 1 and below, it's the same.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And so what we find is the 5-inch, 3/4, and 1-inch are largely our single-family residential users. And single-family homes don't vary too dramatically
Okay.
in terms of their use, whether you're on a 5/8 or a 1-inch.
Okay.
A 5/8 meter on a large, say, older lot could use quite a bit of water because they maybe have a larger lawn, right? Whereas, say, a home on a 3,500 square foot lot, really tiny lot, they may have a 1-inch meter because that's our new standard, but they use hardly any water because it's a brand new home, hardly any landscaping. So we find there's a lot of variance in that. So it was maybe more appropriate to keep them, you know, on the same playing field, if you will. And then once we got into the 1.5-inch and 2-inch, that's when you get into more of your commercial or landscape, and that's when we started making the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so also as part of this rate study, we took a second look at our drought rates, and we are revising the methodology a little bit on this. And what these rates do is during a drought period, we have reduced water use. But if you remember on the slide where I showed the percentages, we still have this revenue requirement that we have to meet to operate the system. So in periods of drought where we're requiring reductions, we still have to meet that same revenue requirement. So what this is a surcharge now, and what it allows us to do is to keep that revenue even as we go year to year so that we're not operating in deficit during a drought period. And it's, you know, it's typically government inflicted. So this would be like state imposed droughts, right? So we're not going to just arbitrarily, you know, call on these drought rates. In the way the municipal code works, it has to be government implemented. So it has to come from the state government. So we talked a lot about numbers and rates. What does this mean to the average user? So what we did is we took that 1-inch meter for a standard residential home, and we looked at different uses, different use cases. So what is our low use, what is our average use, and what is our high use? And what does it mean for the customer moving from one rate to another? So in our low use, that would be about 8,000 gallons a month. It would be about a $6.43 a month increase, so $12 per bill. We bill bi-monthly right now. On our average user, so about 24,000 gallons, that goes up to about $13.18 per month. And then for the high use, it's about $13.74. And what this graphic shows is the dark blue is that service charge. So we talked about that $27.71 per unit versus the $33 for the service charge on the 1-inch meter. That's what that dark blue shows. And then the light blue color is the volume. So that's how much water they're using and what they're being charged for that water. And then likewise, looking at a 12,000 gallon usage, we wanted to see really at the end of the day, where do we stack up in terms of when we do these increases and where are we going to finish? So right now, Clovis is about at the bottom in terms of how much our water bill is per month. With the first increase, we're gonna more or less stay there towards the bottom. And by the time we're done with that third increase, that 18% you saw on our graphic earlier, we're slightly below average, I would say. So I think our average bill, I have it down there in the really fine print, it's about $63.73 is the average on this graphic, and we're gonna come in at about $60 for the 12,000 gallon usage. So a little below average. So a big reason why we're here is we're requesting authorization to move forward on a Proposition 218 hearing. So we wanted to just provide a little bit of information on what Proposition 218 is and what the hearing relates to. So Prop 218 is it defines that a property-related charge may not exceed the cost to provide the service. So we talked a lot about the cost of service analysis we did. So that we're meeting that requirement as part of this study. And then revenues from such charges can only be charged for the purpose of which they're imposed. Charges on a parcel must reflect only the proportional cost for that parcel. And we cannot impose a charge unless the service is actually and immediately available to the owner. And a big part of this is that a written notice of our proposed charges have to be mailed out to the property owners at least 45 days before the public hearing. So as we get into the next steps, so we're here today requesting authorization to proceed with this Prop 218 hearing. And in February 2026, we would propose to send out the Prop 218 compliant notices. So those are the 45-day requirements I just mentioned. Through February and April, we would plan to continue our public outreach program. So as I mentioned earlier, we've met at the Senior Center, we've met here in council chambers. We would anticipate continuing that outreach through this process. Also, we've put notices out on social media. We would plan to continue that as well, just letting the public know, being as transparent as possible that this is coming, and that, you know, we want to prep the public. We want to be forthright and honest with them on what's coming. And then with that, in April, so April 13th actually, we would be looking at conducting the actual hearing and Muni Code update, and with the idea that we would be going in January 1, 2027 to make the rates effective. So with that, we're here to ask council to consider approval of the final draft water rate study report and authorize staff to proceed with a Proposition 218 public hearing, majority protest vote to amend water charges and fees and recycle water charges. And with that, I welcome any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Drew.
Just a quick question. Good, very good presentation. In the past, when the fees that we were charging could be reduced, we rebated money back. Is that correct? Over the last couple of years?
Yes, that's been our practice, that we would rebate back if the funds were unneeded or unused, yes.
So in the event that something wonderful happened, the future costs aren't what they thought we could be, where we could conceivably rebate some of the costs back to the users. But that, obviously, it's not what we're talking about here today, but that is a possibility.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions? Okay. Kevin, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
You know, in looking overall, I'm looking at it from a philosophical perspective, in that your low income, if we raise rates, they will use lower. Your high income folks, they won't care how much rates we, because even whatever the rate is, I'm going to keep using it because I'm willing to pay for it, right? Because I can pay for it. But this makes it where it looks at the high income folks and just go, you can use as much as you want, you know, but then you punish the low income, those who can't afford it. So how do we make it where those who, because if you are on a tight budget, you're telling your kids, stop the water before you brush your teeth. Hey, who's running the water here? You're much more aware because you're paying the bill and you know the finances. And so I look at this and I go, well, it's making sort of your high users, even, you know, the bigger pipes, whatever. I just, is this just, you can't do it that way? Am I just, you know, the heart is different from the math itself, because the math, you know, it doesn't take into account your financial status. It's just, this is the best financial way we can make it work? Or is there a different way, and this is what the consultant feels is the way to meet sort of in the middle? Is that can you understand the question? Does it make sense? Because the way I look at it and the way you explain those other charges and the pipes, it makes it look like, well, I'm in this older home, I like it, my rate was only 113, now it's gonna go to 2, whatever. And so it makes it where, well, why am I having to do all this or pay this much more? How do we explain that to those users?
Yeah, and I think you're right in terms of, we would love to be able to stay with the existing methodology, right? We would love to have the tiers where you're rewarded for conserving water, right? And I think one day in the future, we'll hopefully get back to that. But I think just the way we are today, I think this is the appropriate methodology based on how the legal environment has gone. You know, Otay Water District was sued successfully because of implementing tiers. So same with the city of San Juan Capistrano. So I think the methodology we've put forward kind of is through the lens of that in a lot of respects. And you almost feel like your hands are tied, right? But until we have the ability to firmly say, yes, this is, we feel comfortable doing tiers for these reasons, I think this is the appropriate methodology for where we're at today.
Can you look at in our report, it's page 21. You gave a comparison of existing and proposed volume rates. Can you help me understand that? Because the commercial and then the residential all are 202. It's in the staff report, so I don't know what page it would be for you, but
It's on that page.
yeah, it's table 3. And I'm trying to understand why commercial and residential in this graph is the same when usually commercial is charged or uses more. And I think we're getting rid of the tiers. I mean, it's residential, commercial, and recycled. But why are the commercial and the residential, and I couldn't really understand this chart. Can you explain this chart so that I can understand it?
Yeah, so and I may look to Jeremy to help with this, but this was based on our cost of service analysis. In terms, so.
Oh, so
yeah,
this is
so
just
we're
the
looking at
services then?
volumetric rates. Yeah, these. Yeah, so Jeremy, I'll let you speak to the cost of service.
Yeah, so again, Jeremy Tamargo with Reptile. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. So as part of the bill, there are 2 components, right? So there is the service charge component, and so typically your commercial users will have a larger meter size than your residential customers. So that would be the preceding table, and so you're charged proportionally based on that meter size. And so typically, not all commercial, but most are going to be larger than that 1-inch size. So that portion of the bill, which relates to the fixed capacity of the system, so essentially when Kevin, Nick designed the system, they're basing it based on the fixed capacity, right? You can't just be expanding pipes on a daily basis. So that fixed component would be larger for your typical commercial. The second table that you're looking at is those volumetric rates, and so that's on a per unit basis. So you're being charged per unit of water. So for instance, if you're a single family, say you're using closer to the 12,000 gallons, that would be the 12,000 times the unit rate, the 202. Whereas if you're a commercial property, say you're using double that, triple that, right? So it's a multiplier. That amount you're using, the 24,000, 36,000, times the 202 on the volumetric side. So their bill would generally be larger because they both have a higher service charge as well as the consumption rate, the volume rate, is based on how much of that water you're actually using.
Okay, I get it. Now, because on the previous page, of the previous chart, because the commercial fees for the different pipes have gone down, so I'll look at the 10-inch pipe, because it went from $22.50 now to $1,052. So are they actually saving money with this water hike?
So the difference.
Where only the residential is going up, but the commercial, they're actually saving now, or no? Am I reading it all wrong in the end, like monthly, their bill? Because I know we care a lot about the residential, but then the commercial, the pipe charges went down quite a bit, and then they're still just being charged like everyone else, the 202 extra.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So what's happening on the fixed side, so again, that is the cost of service adjustment based on the fixed hydraulic capacity demand in the system. So that's what we were doing there, is aligning those ratios on the meter size component, the fixed charge, with the demand, proportional demand on the system. So that's where you're seeing those adjustments there. So in the case of, you are correct, in the larger meter sizes, they're actually going down the service charge piece of it. But what's happening, if you then flip to the volume side of things, you could see the commercial and landscape, both tier 1 and tier 2, the volume rates are significantly less. They're the 113 and the 153 on a per unit basis. Whereas now with the uniform rate structure that Kevin and his team, our team is proposing, it goes to 202. And so I can't say for every single bill, but this is much more representative of the true cost of service for those users, where the fixed component is based on that fixed capacity in the system, and they are truly paying the unit rate for their actual usage. And so if you're at a much higher meter, the 6, 8, and 10, you're typically using much more water, right? You wouldn't have such a large meter if you weren't consuming that much on a bi-monthly basis. So it's really just the shift in terms of the fixed charge component versus the volumetric component. But in doing the cost of service analysis, that they're paying their true cost for the their consumption of the water.
So I think businesses will be very happy because it's truer to what they're using based on this.
And I will just say for all,
it seems like it, yeah.
For all customers, right, there is a fixed portion of your bill that, you know, everyone pays based on the meter size. But you do have agency in terms of your water bill, right? And because you are paying a volumetric rate on a per unit basis. So you are, if you are a lower user, you are paying less on that component compared to if your neighbor is using twice the amount of water, 3 times the amount of water. Same on the commercial side as well, right? There are ways to save on your water bill, just like any other customer, and that would be directly reflective on the volumetric rate.
Okay. And I'm assuming when someone comes in and builds something, we tell them which size pipe to put in, right? They're not going, I'm just going to use the smallest pipe, get charged at least, but use as much as possible.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
I just want to make sure that. And then sort of with the rehab costs, you had a slide with all those extra costs, and a couple of them were for new storage and some other ones. Is it taking into consideration, so this is going to go to all users, but some of this stuff is really because of new development that creates some of this stuff. And I think I asked this last time, it's hard to break it right down to, we won't charge current because this new storage is only because of this new village that is coming in. So we're charging everybody sort of the same amount for every new infrastructure that's coming in, or no? It's just so that I can understand this part, because it's saying something new storage reservoir. Like if we don't grow anymore, or if I'm not part of the growth, why am I paying that 4.4 million? Or how do we justify going, yes, you do have to pay, even though you're currently in the city, it's coming into Heritage Grove, but you're paying for it. Can you help us with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we do a project, and we'll just use the new storage reservoir because the new storage reservoir and maybe the recharge basin would be the only two that would really have this unique setup, where when we plan this infrastructure out, we have to proportion out what is the responsibility of the existing user and what is the responsibility of the future user. And those kind of get separate and they stay separate. So the cost you see on the screen here, I wish we could build a storage reservoir for $4.5 million, but that's not the reality in today's climate. So that is only the users, what the users would benefit from by having that storage reservoir.
This is the proportionate share already.
That's their share, yeah. So when we talk about like the pretreatment edition, that's a benefit to the users today. So that's the users' cost of that $15 million. The $4.4 million for the new storage reservoir is only their benefiting component of that. There's another cost that's assigned to the future users.
Yeah.
They're separate accounting.
And just for the record, that's usually much larger than this share.
I believe for that one, the future users have.
It's just so that the current users aren't going, oh, why are we paying 90%?
Yeah.
Right,
no,
and so
I think the current users, the existing users pay 25% of that individual piece of infrastructure.
That is great to know. I just wanted that for the record as well, so that way that as we look at this, someone won't look at this slide and go, why are we paying, you know, this entire new storage for the
Yeah.
entire city?
No, absolutely.
Okay. And then let me just look. I think that's all I have, so. Any other questions? Okay, this time we'll open the public portion. If you have any questions or comments with regards to this water rate study and proposed rates, you may come forward. If you have any questions, we will hear all your questions, and we'll see if staff or the council can answer them.
Bill Scott, 341 Evergreen. This is the third time I've seen some version of this. And, okay, at the very beginning, there were all these costs that they went up. Well, all my costs are going up too. And I see all of those costs that you talked about all went up because of the government. Now, maybe not the Clovis government, but it's the government. And then here we've got another government trying to deal with it. And, well, they went up. What are we going to do? The only thing you guys can come up with is we've got to raise taxes. That's always the answer. It's the government that starts this, the government creates it, and then the government turns to me and says, I want more money. Now, I also saw a couple things that kind of interested me. The mayor was saying that, well, if I've got the money and I can afford to, waste a lot of water, but then I've got my neighbor over here that can't, and you're saying, well, we're not able to do anything about it. But then we just heard about this, well, you got fixed costs and volumetric costs. So there is something in there that you can kind of control, but maybe what he's pointing out is that should be a bigger percentage somehow, some way. And the answer came back, well, we're waiting to get these meters that we put in so we can do it. As if we don't have computer programs now that if me and my wife are talking about going to dinner, all of a sudden my phone starts giving me ads for restaurants. And there should be some way you can take the information, because every month, here's what I did, here's what I did, here's what I did. You should be able to do that. But you want to put in a new meters, which tells me that 2-3 years from now, you're going to come back and say, oh my God, we spent all this money on these meters and now we don't have enough to pay for it. We're going to have to raise the rates again. So this is all complicated, but I'm asking you guys, take a look at it from my point of view. It's just all I see is every time you turn around, more money. We got to spend more money, and I'm just using the same amount of water I've always used. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Hello, Brian Wilson, Bergen Avenue. I only got one question. It was related to the 218, that you can't charge me for something I'm not getting. So how does that relate with the 1 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1/2 inch when you can't get the same amount of water per volume out of a 5/8 versus an inch? So that would be my biggest question, is because I've already see a lawsuit setting up for somebody with a 5/8 inch water meter that can't get the water that you're saying they have to have according to 218. Thank you.
Does that question make sense? I kind of, does it make sense? Can you?
And I'll rely on Jeremy and
Okay.
his experience in doing these all over to answer that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so on the fixed cost component, so it's based on the hydraulic capacity demand of the system. And so in designing the system from a master planning perspective, most communities for a single-family residential will use the 1 inch equivalent as the demand factor. And so that's the reason why the 1 inch, the 3/4, and the 5/8 are utilize the same fixed charge component, because that they would be an equivalent basis in terms of master planning for a fixed demand on the water system.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike
Mike.
Prandini, 2062 Alamos, Clovis. I've read the report. I had some questions. I contacted staff. They answered the questions, and based on the data, I think you guys need to move ahead with Prop 218. And as Councilmember Bressinger indicated, if some of these costs don't materialize, you're going to look at these rates, and even though you'll have an ordinance that says these percentage increases over these periods of time, you can go back at the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year points and adjust them if you need to. So I think you need to move ahead, have the hearings, and since Prop 218 was approved. I think you've had, if I recall, well, you've had two increases based on the 218 process. And I think I was here for one of them. And that's a real high, even though the protest hearing you have to hold, that's a very high threshold. Because you've got, what, 40,000 users? So you got to get 50% of those, plus one. That's a lot of people complaining. And I don't see and hear a lot of people complaining about the water rates in Clovis. I understand the problem. I don't like this. I like the three-tier because as you use more, you pay more. But the court said, no, you can't do that because of Prop 218. I don't agree with it, but that's what the court said. That's what the California Supreme Court said. So you can't do much about it. So I would be in full support of the council moving ahead with the Prop 218 hearing process. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring back to the council. Any more questions or direction wanted? Okay.
It's just a comment. One of the towns listed on the comparison for rates, they didn't increase their rates. I think they increased them in 1995, and when they had to go and actually start catching up, it was a major sticker shock for the people. There was a lot of anger. They had to move things out of their long-term plans for infrastructure. We need to move forward on this.
And Scott, legally, if it fails, we have to move out of that three-tier just because of the court case anyway? So in other words, it's sort of a mandated we have to, or does it always, even if we move out of that system, we still need a 218 for it to pass?
We'd need a 218 if we're going to increase the rates from what they currently are, or beyond what we're currently authorized to charge. We don't need a 218 if we're going to lower rates. It's a 218 if you're going to impose a new fee or an increased fee. We have an escalator right now in the ordinance that allows for small increases annually. But what this study does is kind of reset what that increase is going to be, at least in those initial 3 years. So, but the court cases in the other jurisdictions, they highlight issues with rates pretty much across the state. They're supposed to be cost-based. They're not supposed to be based on tiers that are designed to influence behavior and water usage. Those can be part of the volumetric piece, but it can't be the whole piece. So if it doesn't cost the city $1 more to provide an extra 1,000 gallons of water to someone in Tier 2, as opposed to the 1,000 gallons of water in someone in Tier 1, we can't charge that $1. So if the cost of providing that extra drop of water that takes you from Tier 1 to Tier 2 doesn't cost the city anymore, then we can't charge the customer that. That's where the issue comes in for the cost base.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the council? We have the report and any questions for staff? Is this a receiving file? This is a motion. Yeah, this is a.
So you need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the final draft water rate study report and authorize staff to proceed with the Proposition 218 public hearing and majority protest vote to amend water charges, fees, and recycled water charges.
Second. Okay, we have motion and second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And once again, this is just us starting the 218. And so the citizens now get a say in what actually happened. So just wanted to make that clear. Thank you very much, Nick, Jeremy, and Kevin. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to item 6. This is the workshop item on Public Utilities Department. And Scott Rodolphs, you are here to present. Okay.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll try to make this a little bit more stimulating. Actually, it won't be as good as last week's presentation, but I'll do as good as I can for our Public Utilities Department. So this is the Public Utilities Department update, and kind of just giving you a synopsis of where we're at to date and where we're going. Want to go back to always reassessing why we exist and our community of priorities. And from our last survey where we developed our Measure Y funds and those types of things, the community priorities were, of course, protecting local drinking water sources, keeping public areas clean, maintaining streets and sidewalks, and city services, and of course, everybody wants beautiful parks. Well, public utilities' mission and values and goals are to accomplish those things, and so we need to always make sure we're providing for the well-being of the citizens and essential, dependable, and sustainable services. We have our values that we've made out at the Public Utilities Department. Our folks, all of our employees live by those values. We stress those, if not all the time, daily. And it really keeps people focused on why we exist. And of course, aligning to the goals that we just we went through over about a year or so ago, core community infrastructure and our importance in making sure that that's there. We had some changes, good changes, to our department heads, or what I call department head, our leaders at Public Utilities, our assistant director and other assistant director and deputy director, but we've kind of refocused these guys into taking over each one of their areas. And as you can see, I'm not going to go through each one. There's a lot going on, and they have a lot of responsibility and probably don't get much sleep at night getting their stuff done. In fact, because we're 24/7. And I also want to recognize our department leadership. These are our managers, and so we do have a lot of divisions, sections, whatever you want to call out there. And again, I could go through these individually, but I believe, this is becoming very familiar of what public utilities is. We do have about 215 full-time staff. All these folks that are pictured here are leading divisions in their own respective areas, and they are doing a tremendous job for the city of Clovis. And so just wanted to take a minute here to really recognize our staff in public utilities, the leadership. Going back to the budget, I always like to present this because I just wanted to emphasize how large the public utilities budget is. It's generally is about a third of the city. It's a $127 million budget. When we come back in the next year budget proposal, it will be more. It continues to grow as the cities grow. As the city grows, we have to continue to grow and continue to manage all the areas. I've been through the funding. These may look semi-familiar through my budget presentations, how we are funded. We not only do enterprise funding, we have gas tax, impact tax, general fund. We have the new funding from Measure Y, which I'll go over a little bit more. We have the LMD, and we have internal services where we bill, like for fleet. So fleet mechanics will bill out their time to all the departments. We also have property assessments. We have a existing community facilities district for Woodside Homes. And then I'll get into further the development of the new community facilities district that we are in the process of for creating a funding source to maintain the next 2/3 of the city that's getting built. Because if you look at where we're at today, maybe we're at 130,000, 135,000 population. As we keep expanding our sphere, we're probably going to be in the 280 to 330,000 population. I'm just throwing out some numbers, but we have a lot of growth remaining, and so the Public Utilities Department, as well as the other departments, just has to be in a place looking at the future, how we're going to manage our funding, how we're going to maintain the city, and how we're going to maintain our employees here. So I did want to go over and thank the council for the portion of Measure Y funding that you did allocate to us. It was greatly needed, and it is greatly being used. We have really just brought on the bodies beginning in November in the parks area and streets. So I don't have necessarily the metrics to tell you, and even when we went through the committee, you know, yes, we're getting a good bang for our buck at this point in time with the additional employees because we have them out there working on the tree crews. We have them actually doing things, but there's not enough metrics to build a case yet, and those will come over this next year as these employees really get in there and we continue to line up the metrics on the Measure Y and what benefits. But definitely on the facilities projects, we are investing money into our parks because we did receive a generous amount of Measure Y funds to upgrade or better maintain our parks, and you can see those to the right. So hopefully the Bicentennial Park lighting, which will be a LED retrofit, won't make, you know, I know we got the public comment tonight, but, you know, you can't make everybody happy. We try, and there's things we can do. So, but those are low-level lightings replacements that will be going in there. But we have all these things going on. A big part of the money will go to the Old Town tree and trail irrigation projects and start sprucing that up because those are really getting run down. Old irrigation systems with mature trees, and if you have your own home, you know mature trees tend to destroy irrigation systems, and so we really need to get back out there to these older areas and start replacing the irrigation systems so we don't lose the trees. Briefly going over Measure C impacts, and we are desperately hoping that the private group can take it forward because it's so important to the city, not only to our department, but definitely to other departments. For our department, we really, in direct funding, it's a reimbursement for striping. We get about $50,000 on bike lane striping from the Measure C itself. So we're not, if the Measure C is bringing in multi-millions of dollars, which it is at this point, the current one, we're not getting much of that direct funding. However, if we were to look at the indirect funding in which we work with the capital improvement program to deliver our pavement and preventative maintenance project, which is the Cape Sill and Slurry Sill project, we're investing approximately $2 million annually into that project. So we do the Cape Sills for the more stressed or cracked or fractured roads, and we do Slurry Sills just for keeping that nice looking top maintenance and keeping the water from penetrating, because water is what damages the base of the roads and causes road failure. Generally, the rule of thumb is between every 7 to 10 years you do a slurry sill. You can see with this, if we're at a 5% of city streets are resurfaced per year, we're on a 20-year schedule. So even with the investment of $2 million a year, it's not enough to meet what a recommended schedule would be. However, it is extremely important that this money is coming in, and we would be needing to look for potential replacement funds if Measure C went away. So I'm a big proponent of Measure C continuing some way, somehow. Our ongoing initiatives, of course, you just heard the Prop 218 for the water enterprise, and I want to thank you and I appreciate you letting us move forward with the Prop 218 election. It's going to be needed. There's a lot of things going on, and we really want to still be the top-notch water system and water provider to the city residents that we need to be. I briefly spoke before about the implementation or the formation of a new CFD. We did a workshop a few months back to introduce it. We will be continuing to work with the I won't use kernel project, but the initiation project, the project that brings it in. With that, we will do more workshops with council. We will also, the CFD is going to be, our vision is to form it very broad And in fact, the city of Fresno has one too, that they do the same. It's very broad. You can put a lot of things into it. And so if you need those like sidewalk, road improvements, as well as street lighting, traffic signals, broad enough so that it encompasses that as development continues, 5 to 10 years from now, we may go, oh, we need to add this in because there's no longer a funding source, or there isn't a funding source. It may be that sidewalks become a much bigger issue, and I know we keep talking about that, but there's really no money to fund the fixing of sidewalks. Well, this may be a way that, you know, with regulatory mandates, the way state goes, you know, it could be in 5 years that a mandate comes down and says, hey, all your sidewalks need to be barrier-free. And the cost of doing that would be just enormous for the city. The CFD would also fund the new street lighting, as we talked about before. Currently, in our current system, we get about $1.5 million of general fund to to pay for the electricity, help out street lighting in the older area of town. So looking at the newer area of town, we would look for a funding source to continue. We can't keep getting any more general fund. Also, we have gas tax going towards these things, and the gas tax is limited. So these things are absolutely necessary. Later on this year, we're going to be coming back to council to talk about another workshop. I apologize, it sounds like we're doing a lot of workshops, but water supply reliability and infrastructure. We really need to talk about water reliability, dependability. As the city continues to grow, how are we going to continue to get water throughout the throughout the annual seasons and deliver that water? And so those are some big discussions. There's some options that we're going to need to go over with you. There's some master planning on these that we're going to be probably saying, hey, making recommendations to move forward with. So lots of big things with that on the horizon. SB 1383, I always mention it because it's just it's a continual pain. But we continue to implement and educate, and we're not getting too much kickback as much as we did when we began this process. I think people are getting the idea that you have to have organics buckets, you have to put your organics in your green waste container. So it's coming along, and we will continue to do that. And then, as talked about before, the advanced meter infrastructure, we're in the process of doing the water meter change out and the tower stations and getting ready to begin the software deployment. And we're about 2 years into a 4 to 5 year project horizon. We spread it out so that we had the funding to do this and we wouldn't put any direct impact on the system. So the AMI is not the specific reason we're asking for an increase. That was pretty much already, if we held everything the same, we still probably would, we had approval at that time to move ahead with the AMI project. Generally, the AMI is so that you can look at your system, you can find where the leaks are. It's very valuable in that, but we have a pretty good system, so what it will allow us to do is to look at the diurnal uses. When we say, oh, you know, you can look at it every 2 months and get your readings and stuff like that, well, the AMI is going to allow not only the resident, but the city of Clovis to look at current usages. And then we can assess, are we bringing in more expensive water? Are we paying more in the evening to process water? And so we can start lining up use with the characteristics of what that water costs. And then when we say that it costs more to produce that service at that point in time, or if it costs less, then we can go back and look into spreading that out into a tiered rate structure, because we're still applying cost of service and fairly and appropriately. Right now, because we don't have that granular data, we did it before in 2017 because we just went with the premise. We kept it a very easy Prop 218 on that and reduced the tiered rate structures to meet the Capistrano case. But as you can tell with the other cases, they are laying out a much stringent forward-looking thing where you really have to be able to defend changes or different costs of services to different users. Quickly, department operations. With the water supply, we have 36 active wells. I think when mentioning the PFAS things, we have received some settlement money from our PFAS.
Just a question, real quick with that cost of service. Scott, during the drought, we were threatened to be charged by the state for extra use, or in other words, not conserving. Yet the cost for them to serve is the same. But they can do that, right? And so they can charge us.
Yeah,
but it
they
doesn't
just
cost
did
them any much more to bring the water to us.
They did
But
their
yeah, if we try to do
35%
it- Yeah, I remember
penalty,
that.
and they just did that, and we went through that whole thing where we penalized the customers for
Mhm.
using, and we were the regulator on that for them. It was an awful experience.
Yeah.
But again, our drought rates, are counterintuitive. They're to keep the revenue the same. So as we go and the governor says, hey, there's a 35%, moratorium. We want everybody to conserve based upon, I think they compared a 2013 water year to, and so they just mandate these things.
Mhm.
And so what it does, and this is why the drought rates were put into effect in 2017, it significantly reduced the revenues. So if you can imagine that we tell the water system, you need to stop 35% of your usage. That means the rates that we're charging, we've just lost 35% of the revenue. Our system right now costs what it costs. If we produce a lot more water, a lot little water, it's still, the bulk of the money is still going to cost about the same to run that water system. So if it's a $20 million water system and somebody says, well, we're going to cut 35% of the revenue by telling people to conserve 35%, that had a direct impact, and that's why those drought rates were put into effect. If we look at the water distribution, you can see that we have miles of water main, tons of water meters that we're working on. We're in charge of the wastewater collection, treatment, and reclaimed water. We have 450 miles of sewer main, 8,000 sewer manholes. And then we have over 700 pieces of equipment and growing. So a very large system to operate and maintain. Parks, it's just good to note that we have a lot of trees out there. We have a lot of parks and green belts and paseos, and we know we do our best to keep those to an acceptable level, and we'll continue to do that. But again, it's not really the fun part about our job out there, but landscape dies, and that's a hard thing to deal with because nobody likes that. Nobody likes the golden redwoods or dead trees out there, and so, but our guys are doing our best. And I would tell you that the Measure Y funds are going to be cause a significant improvement, at least for us, and what we look at for tree health and removing and replanting trees out there. And I think that's going to go a long way to how the city looks and how our residents like our city. Traffic signals, we currently maintain about 1,500 of our own, and we have 88 traffic signals. The CFD isn't for these. These will be by existing funding sources. But going forward, in order to get a reduced rate from PG&E as their system works, we're going to be moving to city-owned and maintained streetlights. And so the CFDs that we form with development will be to partially pay for that, as well as other things that we maintain. And then we have a lot of streets to maintain. We do have a 75 PCI overall. That's because of our Cape Seal Slurry Seal program. So it is a successful program. 75 is very good, and that's from our ratings. In most cities, you won't see that. We are doing pretty good overall. The goal is to keep that between a 75 and 80, And so the goal is always going to be preventive maintenance, is to get out there, focus the funds on the stuff before the streets get into a condition where it costs a lot of money to fix them, because that's not a good bang for the buck. The best bang for the buck is to get out there and do these these remedial projects, these preventative projects. Department operations in solid waste, again, SB 1383, residential, commercial. We did we're moving still forward with their new contract for recycling and organics. I do have some metrics. I hesitate to bring those out because we've only been using them 4 months and there's really not enough to go off of. But I can tell you that staff, especially our administration staff, and from the numbers I've seen, it is better in a comparative to Republic. But we want the best, so we will continue to work with them and strive for the best. But Mid-Valley is doing a really good job from what I can tell. Our staff is really enjoying to work with them. They are, at this time, investing heavily into us and very responsive. So I can say that. I feel really good about the decision at this time. And our costs are economical compared to the other bids that we did receive. And then in the community cleanup, we're still doing that, offering that 2 times per year. So we go through quadrant, and 2 times per year. And the specials are still running at $13.50 a pickup. That's about 20, that's been in the municipal code for about 20 years. We keep saying we need to bring that back to council, so at some point, we probably will bring that fee back to council and have it adjusted to a cost of service, or maybe not. The whole reason it's so cheap is to discourage illegal dumping, right? If we're gonna only charge $13.50, you might as well just have folks come out to pick it up. The only thing is that is really, really cheap. And so we're looking at potentially increasing that. But I imagine it's, from what I've seen on the metrics on illegal dumping, it's getting better out there from what we're seeing. PD is heavily engaged with us, and we've got cameras out there. We've made knock-knocks, and it's coming along. It's very hard to catch illegal dumpers. And then we have administration, engineering, technical information, construction management, and geographical information. We have basically all these units working within the Public Utilities Department, making sure that everything's getting done and done right. So just a couple slides on accomplishments, and most people aren't going to go woohoo. But the fixing of the 42-inch low-can water main break was our staff with the contractor that we got on board, and you guys allowing us to move forward in an emergency situation. And it took us about 2.5, 3 months to get that done. It was under the freeway at the edges, and they did an amazing job to fix that. And so it is worth mentioning when we're going in. That's a 42-inch water main down low-can going under the freeway that was leaking, and leaking pretty well. And so they fixed that. They put in some additional manholes so that we can get in there in the future and do some more welding inside. That's a special type of pipe. You can go inside and weld. I wouldn't, because I'm not good with confined spaces, but there's folks that do that. We have the successful Zone 4 and 5, Prop 218. That is a lifesaver for us in parks, because that's going to allow us to, it's counterproductive to the water rate increase, I would say. Had we known, we may have looked at even something a little bit further, but I think we're going to be able to manage through it and keep our services at a much more acceptable level than the past. But I would say that when we look at who the water rate's going to affect, it's going to affect the city of Clovis too. Everybody's in it because we go to a uniform rate. City of Clovis uses a lot of water for landscape and irrigation. Agua Vista Park, we are basically done clearing the site. Renee's staff engineering will come in, and I think in 6 months or so is going to bid the project and put in a park and a beautiful recharge basin. So the recharge basin, of course, is for the public utility side of things, and so we really will welcome being able to increase our recharge along with the Marion basins we're using right now. We are getting ready for part 2 of fixing up old trails. The first one was the Gould Canal Trail that we did a year ago, and we did signage there and some entry features. So we have part 2 happening at Letterman Park. And again, that'll be CDBG money that was redirected there to do that. And it'll be a nice little project. Same kind of idea. It's going to have entry features. It's going to create better access to folks to be able to use the canal banks as a trail. And then, again, exciting for public utilities. And thank you, Council. We did purchase our 20-acre site in Heritage Grove for a facility. We are planning a water treatment plant, but it could also be used for other things too. It's absolutely necessary, so excited about that. And on the solid waste side of things, we held another successful Shred Fed event. The folks that helped sponsor that are like schools and stuff like they got good donations from this event, and we do have a couple folks out there where we got a ground award at the Public Utilities Department, where we have a couple of kids basically out there helping us through the ground award, and we always need to show our Christmas parade truck. Again, the PUD PD illegal dumping removal program is working well. Our PD being integrated with us in this component is very nice. I mean, it allows us to be much more responsive. And then the contract, it's moving right along. Challenges and opportunities. So, trying to relate those to the managing, maintaining, operating, and planning for existing and future city assets. So that's what we do. The big things here is the improvement to the infrastructure on these. Making conservation a California way of life is going to be big. So that just got put into effect in 2024. It has conservation requirements that are going to that we already don't meet. But as we go through this process, it'll be more education. So when we look at the unit rate or the volumetric rate, we're going to be telling people, reduce your volumetric rate. Because there's going to be requirements, and I don't know them specifically off the top of my head, but a reduction in water use. That's what this is all about. It's making conservation a California way of life. And generally, mandates don't come through encouragement. They come through some sort of eventual regulation. We have the wastewater treatment plant issues that we need to deal with. Those are big, and to get into those is probably another workshop on this wastewater side of things, and we will be, because there's a lot of decisions to be made on the wastewater side of things. There's a lot of decisions on how we're going to run the city. The last master plan we did was in 1992 or 1997, something. We're following that. There's a lot of assumptions for that and water master plans that probably won't come to fruition. And so we have to react and change dynamically on these master plans. And it does allow us to look at a new way of, well, maybe the system should look like this, and maybe we should do these things. And we also know development's happening out there. They have all their ideas. And as development changes in the scope and plans and of what they want to do. And so these all interrelate, and so we're trying to be responsive and dynamic, and so, yeah, you'll see some master planning work and long-term projections and planning coming back to council for your consideration on direction and where you think we should go. Always improving city landscape, trails, parks, that's top priority. Thank you again for Measure Y. Finding economic solutions for rising costs from inflation, PG&E, and regulatory mandates. You just heard that in the previous presentation. Well, that's in everything we do out there. And PG&E actually decreased their costs a little bit, but that's from 2 years ago increasing their costs astronomically. And so, you know, we're still reacting to, we can't catch up with what PG&E did before. And so if it sounds good that there's a 1% reduction, well, it doesn't mean much in the big scheme of things. And I would anticipate them getting back on schedule of increases over the next year or two. That's what typically happens. But I could be surprised. Inflation, again, is it's better, but during the COVID and outside of that time, the inflation for public works related items and materials and labor and those things just went through the roof, at least 100%. And that's why our escalator could not keep up with the rising costs. And the regulatory mandates is nonstop, and there'll be other effects from that. What we tried to do in our current 5-year plan is take everything into account over the next 5 to 6 years on the water rates and what we would do everything else. And then we'll be coming back to council in, between 5 to 7 years or 8 with a new water rate study saying, here's how the world's changed, here's how we need to react to it, here's the AMI potentially, here's how we can re-implement tiered rates. Again, like Scott Cross said, you can't have tiered rates to induce conservation. You can't create that. So it makes it difficult. I mean, I think we can be ingenious and do it other ways and maybe figure that out, but on a pure basis of them looking at a rate structure, conservation, you can't have tiered rates for conservation. And then the big things out where I'm at is successful recruitments. It's a big thing. We have a lot of employees, and so we all need them, rowing in the same direction, going on the same train. Just that we all need to be working and trying to accomplish what we need to do. And I'd like to say that our department very much focuses on empowering staff to be something, just what they can be great in public utilities. We'd love to see them be great other places too. I wouldn't encourage any staff to leave public utilities. And then we have streets, maintenance, traffic signals and lighting. Of course, always already spoke about the CFD, parks. And I know we got the increases in zone 4 and 5, but we haven't, zone 2 is a troublesome zone. It is underfunded, and general fund is always going to, public safety is where the funding goes, and that is important, because if you don't have good public safety, you don't have a good city. And so we get our portion of general fund. We very much appreciate it, but it's always do more with less, and we will continue to do that. And again, thank you for the Measure Y, because that means do more, and you're giving us more, and that doesn't go unnoticed from our staff. It was greatly appreciated. Appreciate Drew's leadership on the Advanced Clean Fleet, ACF. I would like to say he got us the extension till 2030, but I know he had a part of that. And so we appreciate that. And so kind of, as opposed to the transit burden, we're kind of let off the hook for a few years. And so we can continue working on our plan. And we still have to purchase 50% of our vehicles as electric vehicles till 2030. But it was 2027 when 100% of our vehicles would have had to have been electric. And that was just not real. So we're doing a lot better. It'll be interesting to see how these things start shaking out as you watch these dealerships or manufacturers stop producing electric because it's not working. And so, when it comes to a head, I don't know what it's going to look like. So maybe by 2030, there'll be another reprieve, because it's just nobody's really working in that direction of designing that extra special refuse truck that can last a whole day on electric charge, because there isn't one right now. Then, and then water again, we'll come back and talk about reliability, conveyance, future water supply. The water supply itself, we're doing very, very well on. And especially if we start getting conservation, we'll probably be looking at, well, then we don't need as much water in the future because we have water conservation going on. So there's a lot of dynamics that we need to look at. The SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, that's never going away. That will cause some definitely resources to go to it, but we have that assessed in the water rate study and in our water enterprise account. Groundwater recharge, of course, and where I was going on the treatment of water contamination, we do get a little bit of funding for the wells that we run that had DBCP components. The TCP, we spend approximately $100,000 a year right now to treat for that. We do have the funding that we got through the litigation set aside. And in PFAS, what's happening currently in that is we're part of, for the lack of a better word, a class action. And we are receiving funding. We've received about $3 million in funding from 3M, DuPont. And that's going, and again, we're setting those aside too. So you probably see it I believe in the new financial forecast, the 5-year forecast, when we get those, you're going to probably see a new line item that's going to say PFAS treatment, where we're going to hold funding in those, because at a certain point in time, there will be money needed to be expended towards treating PFAS. And same thing with the TCP. The money that we got through the litigation over the long-term system and treatment of the system is not going to be enough to pay for it. So, that money will be used at the point in time it's needed. And then, 30, 40 years from now, it'll just be part of our normal operations. Generally on all these things, it's granular activated carbon. And that's what we have. And you'll see some of our well sites will have big tanks in them. Well, that's because we're running the water through the carbon. And then lastly, looking at our Measure Y plan coming up for this following year, we do have, at least in the allocation framework that was laid out for council and they approved, at least tentatively going forward, additional works for the general fund parks crews. We have some more streets coming in. Again, all these were aligned to what the priorities were: street lighting. And then we have a couple of support positions that, of course, will work in those Measure Y areas, supporting staff. And the fleet mechanic, you would say, well, why is that Measure Y? Because a portion of that will be to take care of public safety. And so we're using that to fund that position. And I am available for any questions or comments.
Okay, any questions or comments for Scott? Excellent report, Scott.
Can you start over? Just kidding. Is that a good idea? No. Nobody ever thinks it's a good
I'll
idea.
vote it on that one.
Oh, man.
You want me to put you to sleep too?
Huh? Apologize for being late. I do have a question, and I just asked Matt. So in the solid waste new contract with Mid-Valley, when did we issue that contract?
It started August 1st.
So will you bring back at the year mark? I couldn't remember when it was.
We haven't brought any metrics back. We've given you kind of an idea that things are going good, as from what we can tell. I do have some numbers, but I told the council I hesitate. They're not enough. It does show that the service is more responsive, less misses, and those than the Republic services. But that's a comparison. I don't know if it's potatoes to potatoes or what, but because we want zero. And so what I want to get to is taking into a full year account without any, so from an August to August kind of point of view, coming back to council and saying, okay, here's the metrics. That's something that we can base on. I can tell you from the non-metric side of things, the interdepartmental relationships between Mid-Valley and the city of Clovis, our administration staff, it's growing quite well because they're very responsive at this time. And I would expect nothing less. It's a new contract, a new
just
award.
got a new job.
Yes, it's the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the honeymoon phase goes for the full 10 years. But they are doing, and not to get into a comparative here.
I was
but
just
they're-
really, I just
they're
want to
doing
make sure,
very good comparatively.
I just want to make sure that at the 1 year mark, I just couldn't remember when the 1 year mark was, that you would be able to bring back some performance metrics. Because I would just say, as one resident, they spill more trash on my street than Republic ever did. When I take my dog for a walk every morning after trash day, I take a trash bag and I pick up something in front of everybody's house. So I'm not seeing that kind, other metrics I'm sure are good, but that's all I'm trying to get at. So if at 1 year you can bring back customer response, your metrics, and then just to make sure that it is a 10-year relationship.
It is
here.
absolutely, that's great, because we will, from this, contact the Mid-Valley for the driver in that area. He shouldn't be doing that, and that's not right. And so we don't like that. We're not getting necessarily complaints on that issue, but then again, we're not at the ground level looking at everything
might
at
just be
this
my
point in
street.
time.
I'm just kidding. I wave at them though. They all wave back. It's all good. No, so I just wanted to just check on when that report would be. And so that's all.
If it's okay, I think if we
That's
came
fine.
back when we had some good amount of numbers.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
I don't know if the metrics are going to get into.
Well, you'll have customer data.
yeah.
I just feel like that was about 5 years ago that we did that, so I've lost track of how long ago it's been. So that's all. But I'll wait for August. Is good.
And Mid-Valley is supposed to send out a survey to the customers, and maybe we want to put it all together to see how their survey went, so that we can take their survey, put it with our metrics, and say, are we really getting a good value for the value of that service?
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you.
Our vote was just earlier, that's why it seemed like longer.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's
because
such
we
a long
voted,
time
what, 2 or
ago.
3 months before. it ended.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Well, it gives Kevin and I something to do every Friday morning, so I appreciate that. But we'll look forward to the data when you get it.
My apologies.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and open up the public portion. If you have any comments, questions with regards to public utilities in the report.
Good evening, Eric Rollins. I live on Ashcroft Avenue. I'm also on the Measure Y committee, and I mostly have questions. I generally think we have a pretty good staff, we have a pretty good council, but every person that's good at their job believes with more money or more staff, they could do a better job. I think that's kind of a given for people in government. We are lucky that we have people in government that are also responsive and understand their jobs well. But as I watched this presentation, if I counted right, we looked at like 13 new people and 5 vehicles, 4 light duty and 1 tree truck. And my understanding was Measure Y was going to be about 92% for police and fire and about 8% otherwise. Can we hire 13 people, buy 5 trucks, and stay within those parameters? We could pull up the charts, because I might be double counting some of these people, because I'm seeing these charts from, I probably should be sitting in the front with my eyes. Let's see. So we have one, titled Measure Y, Investment in Progress. That one's kind of, and it was early on. That's green and pink, and that talked about employees, 2 workers for parks, and a light-duty truck and a tree truck. I just don't want to be double counting these, but really it is fair to say, hey, if our goal is to be kind of in this range, then, and the rest of the money focuses on police and fire or staff for police and fire, are we meeting those goals? I don't know that we can pull those up if needed, or maybe you can just answer that.
Do you have other questions? We'll get all your questions.
Mostly just that.
Okay. Because I think what Scott is reporting is based upon the budget figures that led to the 92 that Andy reported. So these are not new requests, and these are just per keeping with what your numbers you have. So it's the money's allocated according to the budget that we have. So I didn't see in there anything Scott is requesting new. And some of them showed 2029, 2028, so it's not all next year. So I just wanted to, we have always stood firm as a council, and Andy in his reporting, this is what it is, and it came out to the 92%.
As long as we're in that range, I'm not trying to have a fit.
We're there, and these are not new. So I just wanted to assure you of that, and also
If I may.
Yes.
Yes, the whole proportion was set on that, 92, and so we are probably a large part of the 8%, but also our number was formed off of the revenues coming in at half the value. So it's actually, I think, Andy, it'll be somewhat smaller than that. So the proportionate share of that's going to parks and streets is going to be significantly less than the 8%. It's going to be.
Well, and eventually, we're going to reach a point where police and fire, I'm hoping, are going to say, look, we're basically good, and we will be able to spend the money on some other things. But we very much have a pledge of almost every council member up there, and I can tell stories of when I saw them speak, when they came to other groups, when they went out in public and promoted it, that said, this money's for police and fire. So I'm very much there to stand for that. Aside from that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eric.
Hello, my name is Steven Trevino. I live on Bullard. Sir, I think maybe I misunderstood you, but you know, I guess if you want to have your garbage picked up in front of your house, you charge like $13, I believe you said, and you're thinking about raising that rate. Am I correct? That's what you were saying, or something like that?
You want?
Scott, go ahead. You can answer that.
We charge $13.50 for what we call a special. So you can call our department and we'll come out if you're paying into the solid waste services of the city of Clovis and pick up your whatever you put out there pretty much.
Now, you were saying that you want to raise that amount?
No, I'm saying, if you want me to respond.
Yes.
I'm saying that $13.50 was established 25 years ago, and it doesn't come close to paying for the cost of service. It would be up to council to decide if there should be an increase to the cost of service.
Okay. The reason I'm saying that, Mayor, is there's been times I've wanted to take things to the dump, and I don't know if you've ever been to the dump. It's like 30 miles from here.
Yeah.
It's on the other side of the county. And sometimes you have 1 or 2 items you want to throw away. And I wish the city of Clovis, I mentioned this, you need to put a big dumpster somewhere so that the people have somewhere to throw their garbage in between those pickups. Because that's why in our neighborhood, you see people throwing mattresses and car hoods and all kinds of stuff in our alleys because they don't have a way of disposing this stuff. So just something. Thank you.
And if they want to throw it in front and call us to pick it up, it's that $13
Yeah,
charge,
$13.50.
which is
Yeah, and
bargain.
And sir, one of the things also is that a lot of people are unaware of that.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
a lot of
You
people
right.
are unaware of that. And so anyways,
That's
thank you.
excellent point. Thank you, Mr. Trevino. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that public portion. This is a receive and file item, and so it's just a workshop. So thank you, Scott, for your report. Yeah, and so Chad can probably put something out again about that $13 service on social media. Okay, we will now move to item 8. We already did item 7 at the beginning of the agenda, so we will now move to the appointment for the Fresno County Transportation Authority Urban at-Large Board Member, and staff on this is our City Manager, Andy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Fresno County Transportation Authority Urban at-Large Board Member position have been held by Sarah Harris since 2022, who recently resigned. Larry Westerland has indicated an interest in serving on the FCTA board. Mr. Westerland has served on the Measure C Renewal Executive Committee and has worked with elected officials from both Fresno and Clovis. The FCTA has reached out and believes Mr. Westerland would be a great addition to the board. It is recommended for the mayor and the council to consider appointment to this position. And of note, the city of Fresno approved the appointment last week. So I'll turn it back to the mayor and council for their deliberation on that.
And some more background on this. I asked the city manager, and I think Lynn was in some of the emails when Sarah resigned. And so we were going back, I think Clovis, Andy reached out informally to about 5 people. I think we submitted 3 of them. They went through all of them. They declined to serve and at that time, City of Fresno also agreed to the 3, and so the FCTA staff reached out, but they declined to accept, and so now we are here at this level with Larry Westerland, which we informally right now agree with Andy and I, and then I'm bringing it to the council to see if they would approve that as well, to serve. I don't know the terms, Lynn. Do you know the terms, Andy, on these? Is it just 4 years and
I believe it's a
automatic
4
renewal?
years. Yeah,
Yeah.
but this one's filling a seat, so I believe there
Okay,
is
and serving out the
maybe
term.
another year left on this one, or year and a half, and then it'll be reappointed.
Yeah. And so any questions from the council?
I'm trying to, one other point, I'm trying to remember over the years, we've tried to alternate a Clovis and a Fresno.
Yeah, the Clovis candidates declined.
Right, but I'm not sure, the longest serving was Joe Levy. And he served for a number of years, and then it was vacant for,
Very
I'm
long
gonna say
time.
4 years or 5 years. And then Sarah, also a Fresno resident, accepted the role. And she was a wonderful member of the disabled community, so she brought a really interesting perspective to the board. So I don't think Clovis has had a Clovis proper person on the board for a number of years, but it's not for lack of trying. So just a little more context. So the point is, we can agree and move on,
Yeah.
and that's how we landed on Larry.
Yeah. And I think the city manager and I try to keep sort of the communities with physical disabilities in there, because I think they have a perspective on transportation that many of us take for granted. And so we tried 2 of them with that background, with that history, and it would have been great, but they also declined, and so we tried. So here we are. Any other questions? Go ahead, Larry.
I'm a little confused why there isn't any pedigree information about Mr.
Yeah, it wasn't provided by FCTA or the candidate.
So
We reached out and requested it, but didn't receive anything.
So they expect us to just rubber stamp this? Is that what I'm reading here? Because the candidate doesn't show, we get no information about this. Is that, am I being overly critical?
No, I don't think so. We can reach out. I mean, I understood it more as a formality, because the interview was done by the FCTA. They reached out. And so now the 2 entities see if we approve and agree
So
moving forward.
if we vote this down, what happens?
They would need to find a
They would-
different
yeah.
candidate.
I mean, I'm looking at this from, frankly, it's a little disrespectful.
And I will say, I did not ask for Mr. Russell to come as well. So I know, I'm pretty sure I didn't direct Andy as well. So that probably is not his fault for not being here this evening, so.
Andy, the FCTA staff did the interviews, or,
They contacted
Yeah.
him.
and so you did not interview Larry?
No.
Well, I mean, I would just say, Navy Reserve, retired attorney, city council member in the city of Fresno, some years ago now, 15, 18-ish, I don't know, it's been a while.
Pretty involved.
Served the city of Fresno as the economic development director for a number of years, now works in the private sector, was on the Measure C steering committee. So I think he has a very, he's a good resume, he's a good kind of civic engaged person, and you don't have anything other than what I just told you, to your point. Your point still stands. You don't have anything in the document. So,
I mean, if I recall, I believe he was a military officer, he'd been.
maybe.
Yes, he
Yeah,
was. That's why
I know I've met him, I'm looking at it from a process.
No, I understand, yeah.
Situation.
Yeah. I think he was in the JAG Corps, I'm not sure, but he was a
You're
lieutenant
abs-
commander,
You're
JAG.
absolutely correct.
Yeah. So a really upstanding individual, and you don't know that except I just told you. I mean, it's not in here, to your point.
Yeah, and I didn't get, I was trying to look back when you reappointed, is it Sarah? And so it was, I remember she was here, right? Did she come?
I
Did she
don't
come
remember
that
she
night?
came to
See,
the
I don't
Clovis City
know.
Council, I don't
think so.
remember.
Yeah, so that's why it was just, the way this was appointed in the past, it was just not as formal as a Clovis. So if we like, we can continue it, get more information for the council. And so that way we can bring it back and get more information, whatever we want as a council before we move forward. Because I don't know if there's an application.
The only
Lynn,
thing
you
I
served
don't
there,
know.
so I don't know. Because we don't have any formal application on our end. It's sort of here, they interviewed, Do you guys agree moving forward with these candidates? Andy did give me more bio on our candidates, the ones that Andy moved forward, because when I was sharing it with Mayor Dyer and FCTA, I said, these are the qualifications, this is why Clovis recommends these individuals. And so they went through the three. They did agree, I was surprised, and so.
Can you restate what you said about what it was that we asked for about this applicant but didn't get?
I requested a resume or something to that effect to attach to the staff report.
And you requested that of FCTA or?
Yes, of FCTA.
And did they respond at all, or it was just
Yeah, they
no
weren't-
response at all?
No response. Yeah, they weren't able to produce anything in time for publication.
But they didn't
They
say,
still
we're not,
didn't have gotten
they
it.
didn't say we don't have enough time for that, you just got
No,
nothing.
I just don't think it was part of their normal process. I think that hasn't been done in the past, so that was probably outside of their normal procedures.
Yeah, I have to agree with Drew that I'm uncomfortable with this process. That it's just kind of, it feels like we're just expected to rubber stamp it rather than having anything that we can actually deliberate on. Obviously, we had candidates that we presented certain qualifications for, and we don't have that for this person as far as what it is that they're asking us to say. We think that would be a good partial representative for our city. So I'm uncomfortable with that at this point.
I would offer that if FCTA did the vetting, and it always is a back and forth, and it's not an equal, like, if it was your turn, my turn, it's not ever been that. And this job is super hard to fill. And it's super awkward to not have a public member on the FCTA. So I guess because of my experience working with Larry and knowing his civic track record, I'm very comfortable that he would fill this role perfectly well and represent the whole and not just the city of Fresno. That's part of the deal. They represent the urban area. So I don't know that continuing it, for me, it would not be a priority, and I think we could make the process better in the future. To clarify it more is, there are vacancies, this does occur from time to time, and leaving it empty for 4 years was a terrible idea. So I think the process, to your point, could be improved, whatever that word is, improved. But at this point, I'm comfortable appointing Larry, moving this along, and I think it's kind of in the relationship with the city of Fresno, it would be good to move this forward and fill that vacancy.
Is there any exigency that this needs to be filled tonight?
It doesn't, but it's been vacant for 6 months, 4 months, I'm not sure. So it just languishes, it's the kind of thing that languishes, but if, so no. No more than what's a vacancy appear, and yet, because we have a 4-4 split often on FCTA, so it would be really great to have a 9th person.
I understand. Are you going to open up to public comment?
I will. Just want to see if there's any other comments. Okay. Yeah, and so we went through this. It takes a while. It takes about 2 months, a month and a half with each candidate. So to just get them in, get the conversation with the FCTA. So I just wanted to let everyone know. And when Larry's name was proposed, I'm familiar with him on his work with in the council. I worked with him on the executive committee on Measure C, and so that's why it was someone I was comfortable with. Personally, I preferred a Clovis person, but we gave our 3 shots, and it was, that was our chance, and we thought they were good candidates as well. So, but anyway, we'll open up public portion and see what the public, if any of you have any questions regarding this item, any thoughts? Okay, we'll close the public portion, bring it back. What's the
Well, I will make
pleasure
the
of
motion that we approve Larry and that we request FCTA to establish a more reliable process going forward so that each agency has what they need to make a decision when the next vacancy occurs, which it will occur.
Get a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes 3-2. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to city manager comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a few updates. We have a planning commission meeting this coming week on Thursday night. We also have a public meeting and workshop. This is where you can come and learn how to use CDBG funding in our community, come up with ideas. That's next Monday, 4 p.m. And then the General Plan Advisory Committee is kicking off their meetings for this year. They're open to the public, and that'll be next Thursday, January 29th. So with that, I'll turn it back
What's
to you,
the
Mayor.
topic for the 29th, Andy? Do you
I
have
believe
an
they're
idea?
kicking off this discussion on the land use
Land use,
map.
okay, those are important.
Yes, that's correct. Very important meeting.
Okay, now we move to city council comments. Councilmember Basco.
So on yesterday, Monday, I did the Poverello House, went out and did the day of serving in the morning, and that was pretty, it was kind of fun, actually. We had a good time out there with Kaiser. It was their day of volunteering and had been asked to go out there, so I helped serve breakfast, and then went to the MLK March after that. The mayor was out there, and I'll let him elaborate more on those details and events from the day. And then I had reached out to Andy in regards to Peg Boss Plaza and where do we go from here with this. So it's, it's established, and so, going forward, how do we present people, and how do we, put people and associate them with Peg Boss? And, we have Pat Wynn, we have Lynn, who's been on the council for many years, and we have Janet Davis, who was, the first female police chief, things like that. So, I think, I don't want it to see it be something we made this memorial, we put some stuff out there, and we put, Peg Boss and honored her. At what point do we go forward with looking at other residents of Clovis who have been historical and where we've gone with our city and the things we've done? So I don't know that we have a protocol in place. I don't know that we have any idea where it goes from here. But I do think it's something we shouldn't let languish to the next year or 2 years down the road, and maybe we should look at how we want to do that going forward and go from there. So that was my thoughts, at least for that project going forward. So,
And if I could speak, we don't have a policy in regards to Peg Boss Plaza. We have naming conventions for other parks and policies council has adopted. But in order to move forward on this, staff doesn't have any direction per se that we can follow. So we would need to bring an item back to get some direction from either particular names or process or both, in order to really kind of put that on the map for staff to implement going forward.
I totally agree with Matt, and I think we don't need any names until we have a process. And so I think we should try to figure out what that is. Is it once a year? Is it on the city's birthday? Is it when they die? Is it when they stop serving? I don't know what it is, but I think we should think about that. And maybe we put together 2 or 3 citizens to help us think it through. So we're not thinking about ourselves, or I mean, not ourselves, but like thinking about it ourselves, not about ourselves, but you know what I mean? So anyway, maybe a couple of folks to help us think that through, or a staff member and I don't know, but just to get some input into it and how we, because it is to honor people that have made a difference, and if it gets too far afield from that, then it won't be honoring Peg, and that's the whole point. So I would, if you want a direction, I would support Matt's direction to, let's put together a process and figure out what that looks like, and then we can decide how to add people as we go.
So do I have consensus from council to work on that? Can we bring that back at some point for input consideration?
Would we consider what Peg also thinks about it? Her input, or is it ours and then we own it and we decide? I mean, because her thought process is sharp. I like the way she thinks and vets people.
She'll let you know.
Yeah.
I say that may not be a good idea.
Okay.
That person never. Take my name off. No, I'm kidding. That's good too.
Okay. Thank you, man. I think you have consensus, Andy. Okay. Councilmember Bessinger.
Just quickly, most of the council was there for the MLK breakfast. Our staff does such a great job. Aaron Ford has stepped in well for George, God rest his soul. And I'm proud of what we do. I think it's important for the city of Clovis to be at the forefront of these things. That's all I have.
Thank you, Drew. Councilmember Ashbeck.
Ditto on the MLK breakfast. I thought Dr. Jimenez Sandoval was probably the best. Sorry, I did it myself. Okay, I did it myself too. He was way better than me, barely better than you, but he was really you both told really personal stories, but you know what I mean? That was bad, huh? Sorry. Okay, he was way better than me, but that's a low bar. Anyway, I just thought he did a really good job. He did a really personal story about the difference in his life. So anyway, really an honor to hear him and you. Okay, you were good too. Now I feel bad. But it was really it was a great morning. So that's all I have.
Mayor Pro Tem Pierce.
Yeah, on Friday morning, I attended the Central Valley Anti-Trafficking Conference at Clovis Hills Church, and just, again, a fantastic opportunity to hear from people here locally, like organizations like Breaking the Chains, and Deborah Rush, who's one of the co-founders and CEOs of that organization, talking about the reality of what goes on in the Central Valley right here in the Fresno-Clovis area in regards to sex trafficking. And this particular conference was focused on children. So it was difficult but necessary to really shine the light on the realities of what goes on here. And there was also a lieutenant from the Fresno Police Department who works with Magic and does a lot of the boots on the ground stuff, rescuing people out of those situations. And so just kudos. And State Senator Shannon Grove, who has been instrumental at the legislative level in Sacramento passing bills to actually get selling kids for sex to be a serious felony. Crazy that was a lift to get that done, but just a great opportunity for people to come together and not just hear the stories, but to ask the questions and hear the answers to what can we do? What does it look like to say something, say something? Where do you go with your concerns? And focused also on parents and what they can do when they have questions and they think, I'm not so sure about that relationship I see developing. And the importance of being engaged. So just a really fantastic opportunity for people to learn and also get answers on how to handle some difficult but real situations. And just appreciate our community always putting that as a forefront, putting that out at the forefront and shining a light on it and making sure that people are aware.
Thank you. MLK was great. I wanted to...
You look good too.
No, the events. I don't think it's, maybe is it Aaron's duty or not, but I think we're not invited to the other MLK events. The garlanding, the awards that night, even the march. I know our officers go, and then Matt has always gone, so he remembers, but if we don't get a formal invitation, it's hard to remember, because then Rebecca doesn't remind us, and so some of us just go. So for staff involved, if you can get the community groups to invite us to these things, I think it's important. I'll say it with regards to the Veterans Parade. Her 2 years as mayor, no invitation to the city of Clovis. I didn't get it last year. We'll see if we get it this year. So in other words, the city of Clovis is left out of events that really all of us participate in. And so I think we need to, some of us just show up, but at the same time, I think they should be inviting the city of Clovis regardless of who sits in the mayor's seat, so that way the rest of the council goes. I said this to the Hmong New Year, and so that's another one where, I know about it, I go, but I keep telling them, I'm not going to invite, because your invitation is not an invitation of the council. And if you don't invite the council, I think they deserve the same respect as the Fresno council, whom you invite formally. You need to also invite this council, so that way, everybody can go. I also put down in here, what else did I put? The past zoo events, we haven't gone. I think they're going to change that. The opening of Kingdoms of Asia, some of their events, they don't invite the city of Clovis. And then I think I talked to the Housing Authority when they did their housing symposium. We have a housing project. We weren't invited to that as a council to be present as a city at those big events that really addresses issues. And I think the homelessness discussion, we all heard it on the news before City of Fresno formally invited us to those meetings, so that we can discuss about certain issues as a group. So we will keep doing that. On that, we had a meeting last Tuesday. Councilmember Bessinger and I went, and it was Council President Carbasi, Councilmember Maxwell, Mayor, City Manager, and Chief of Staff, and then Paul and Andy went with us. It was just to sort of feel out, talk very high level, and I think it was very positive because they wanted to continue to have these discussions so we can kind of look at issues, talk about infrastructure, talk about growth areas that abut to each other, and see what those challenges are, and looking just at other measures or issues that are happening, so we can look at that. We will move forward. We kind of said we were waiting to see who they would reappoint or appoint as their council president, and it's Councilman Carbasi again. So he's interested in moving these discussions forward. So that's something I wanted to let the rest of the council and also the public know about. Went to Valley Decor's ribbon cutting, and so they're coming. It's sort of that industrial area, commercial area right south of Lowe's. And so sometimes that area gets forgotten, that there's businesses there. And we went to a brewery that opened there, and now there's Valley Decors that is there. And so it's good to see businesses coming to that area. Went to the MLK March. I think it was great. And thank you to our police for being there. And anyone else I didn't see, you know, we were well represented, and Councilmember Basco and I were there as well. And so it was good. And let me see. That's all I have. And so we will now move to closed session. On the item is conference with labor negotiators. And so if you have any comments you would like to give on the closed session, you can do so at this time. Anyone in the public?
Mayor, before we end, there was a traffic accident last week, and I think she's a Buchanan student, was seriously injured, and asked everybody keep the Sanchez family in their prayers.
Thank you, Drew. Go ahead, Bill. Mm-hmm.
You go? Okay. Bill Scott, 341 Evergreen. Okay, I don't have the security clearance to know what it is you're going to talk about here, and I could be completely off base and my remarks completely irrelevant, but I kind of think the way you've got it all laid out, you're going to be talking about upcoming raises with the various unions. And I'd like to see somebody in there represent my views on this. As a background, I get Social Security, and I've got money that I've saved up all my life to put in the bank. And when I retired, I had it doled out to me as if I'm going to make it to 95 years old. Well, with all the increases in inflation, that's not good enough anymore. I could get it to give me more, but then I'd be betting I'm only going to make it to 85 years old. So my only increase is Social Security, which is money I gave to the government all these years, and they've mismanaged it, and I don't get anywhere near what I paid into it if I was investing it. So they decided this year that the most they could give me was a 2.5% raise. Well, if the government can only afford to give me a 2.5% raise, how is it the government could then give employees more than a 2.5% raise? And they're going to come at you with all kinds of ideas. Well, Bakersfield got a 4% raise, and Santa Clara got a 5% raise. And well, if you want to go to Santa Clara, fine, but you can't afford a house there. And who wants to live in Bakersfield? So if you're getting a 2.5% raise, at least you get to live in Clovis. And I just like to see you guys represent me as you're doing these negotiations. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, Scott, are we expecting to report anything out from closed session?
We're not requesting action that would require a report tonight, no.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good to see you again, Mr. Trevino. Welcome back.